This is a story called Living with Junkies. It was, 1970s. I was living in Seattle, and let me tell you, I was not doing well. I was, the only place I could even afford was a tiny room in a place called the Roach Motel. It was not really called the Roach Motel, but everybody who lived there called it the Roach Motel, and it lived up to its name. And it was in the Fremont district. I don't know if you know Seattle, but it was in the Fremont district. I've heard that that whole area has gone upscale, and it's rather nice now. But boy, it was a very seedy neighborhood when I lived there. And a friend came and rescued me. He had rented a apartment, a two-bedroom apartment in the Ballard district, which was definitely better than the Fremont district. Once I moved there, I found it wasn't that much better, but it definitely seemed better. At least there were no roaches. We moved into it was an old house that had been converted into apartments. So there was a downstairs apartment and an upstairs apartment, and we had the upstairs apartment. And the first thing I noticed about it was there were silhouettes painted on the walls. It had those off-white walls that rental properties often have, and people had painted silhouettes on those walls. And I don't mean just like the head, the silhouette of a head, but full body silhouettes. And they were all guys. There was like a red guy and a green guy and an orange guy. I don't know, maybe five or six full body silhouettes. Downstairs, in the downstairs apartment, lived junkies. And these were the very first junkies I ever met in my life, my first junkies. And I learned quite a bit about junkies just from hanging around these people. Uh, about the silhouettes. They had a friend that they called Dan the Man, and Dan the Man he was very agitated, really high speed, talk, really rapidly, even faster than I'm talking now. And he reminded me a little bit of Robin Williams, if you can imagine a Robin Williams who isn't really all that funny, but is speeded up that fast. And I'm pretty sure he was still using the products he liked to sell. Anyway, he told us that he and his friends, they used to rent our apartment, that upstairs apartment, and they sold drugs out of our apartment. And my room was for the, I don't know, the fast drugs. So things like speed, jugs of White Cross tablets and crystal meth they would sell in that apartment. And the other apartment was for the mellow drugs. That's what he called them, the mellow drugs. And the mellow drugs were things like heroin and pot, stuff like that. And he identified all those silhouettes. He had been there the night they made all those silhouettes, and I think he was like Mr. Orange. And he told us who Mr. Green was, and Mr. Red over here was somebody. He knew all their names. The guys downstairs, it was two guys and two women. They were really young, probably just out of high school. I don't think any of them actually graduated from high school, but they were all, I suppose, 20 years old, 21 years old, and they were very nice. I don't know, maybe in my stereotype, I'd imagine junkies to be really scary, violent people, but these were very, very friendly, blue collar kind of people. Uh, and their drug of choice, of course, was heroin. And heroin is like the opposite of speed. You get really slowed down. In fact, I'm going to come right on and say I think junkies are boring. The typical junkie is quite a boring person who likes to lay around the house. They like to watch cartoons. They watched Woody Woodpecker. They were big fans of Woody Woodpecker. Uh, they would sleep a lot. I don't know if you've ever lived with dogs. My impression about dogs, especially as they get older, is they like to sleep and sleep and sleep. I mean, a typical dog, I think, probably sleeps about 20 out of 24 hours. And if you ask me, junkies are kind of the dogs of the human race because that's about how much they like to sleep. They are always nodding off in their chairs. And in fact, I can remember, they all smoked cigarettes, and they would have these cigarettes in their hand, and they'd fall asleep, and the cigarette would burn right down to their fingers, and they whoa, wake up, and sparks flying around, and in fact, all the junkies I ever met always had those burns, those kind of burn scars, right there from cigarettes, and I think that tells you something about the not very exciting life of junkies when you see their fingers. Um, how did they afford the heroin. It took me a few weeks to figure that out. Um, what they said was, I don't know if this is true, but this is what they told me. There was a magazine back then called Reader's Digest. I don't even know if the Reader's Digest still exists, but it was an extremely popular magazine, and it seemed like every working class family in America, every middle class family in America had a subscription to the Reader's Digest. I think except for TV Guide, it was the most popular magazine in America, and it had all kinds of little articles in it about many different topics. And according to the Junkies, it had once run a popular article about how if you're gonna go on vacation, what you should do with your house to protect it from thieves. And one piece of advice was you should always leave some lights on, so that way if thieves are prowling around your neighborhood, they'll see the lights on at 3 o'clock in the morning in your house, and they'll think, "Ooh, people in there. We better not rob that place." What they did was on weekday nights, late at night, like after 2 a.m., like 2:30 a.m., 3 a.m., they would drive around in middle class neighborhoods of Seattle, and they would look for houses that had the lights on. 3 o'clock in the morning, lights are on. And if there were a lot of cars around, they would think, it was some kind of party. But if there really weren't a bunch of cars around and the lights were on, they'd go right up to the house and they would knock on the door. They'd ring the doorbell, ring, 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 ring. If there was a dog, they would leave. If anybody came to the door and answered the door, they'd say like, "Oh man, you're not Jack. We were looking for Jack. We thought, oh man, we got the wrong address. Sorry, sorry, sorry." And they would leave. But typically, no one would answer the door. There would be no dog in there, and they would break in. I think they would like go around back and break in some windows, and they would steal anything they could sell. So they loved, stereo equipment, televisions. Record albums, bicycles, and anything that could be easily sold in Seattle, they would steal. Oh, and meat. They would always steal meat. They said all these places always had freezers just jam full of like steaks, and so they would bring home sirloins and T-bones and just really really good meat. I used to think they lived on pretty much a steady diet of cartoons and heroin and meat, especially T-bones. They loved T-bones. You could always get like a really cheap T-bone from these people. Their living room was, it was like a garage sale or something, and a lot of people I know would buy stuff from them. And you could buy a television for $40, and an entire stereo for $55 or something. They would occasionally, if they needed money bad enough, they would run sales there in the living room. And one time they stole a 10-speed bike, and they could not seem to unload that 10-speed bike, and so I kind of inherited it. I didn't pay for it, but I have to admit I wasn't any better than anybody else, and I rode that bicycle all over Seattle. One day I was sleeping late. I mean, every day I slept late. My idea was wake up about the crack of noon. And I was sound asleep. I'd been up all night. I suppose, I don't know, it was like 11 o'clock in the morning or something like that. And I had this weird dream. And in my dream, those silhouettes on our walls detached from the walls. And they were like wandering around our apartment talking. I could hear their voices. I'm kind of going to sleep and waking up and hearing these strange voices. And I dreamed like the door to my bedroom kind of opened up, and I heard a voice, and the voice said, "Ooh, man, there's a dude in here. There's a dude sleeping in here, man." And I kind of hear the door being really quietly closed, and I go to sleep, and I wake up, and it all seemed like a dream. And a couple nights later, my roommate, he's pawing through his record collection. He has, I don't know, hundreds of albums. And all of a sudden he goes, "Where's my Chuck Berry? Where's my greatest hits of Chuck Berry?" I don't know. And then he goes, "Where's my Who's Next?" And then he goes, "Electric Ladyland is missing. All my Jimi Hendrix albums." And after a while he goes, "Where's my Ray Charles? They stole my Ray Charles," and he's missing, I don't know, 40% of his album collection. And I don't fess up. I don't tell him anything about my dream. Go, wow, oh God, we must have got robbed. About a week goes by and phone rings, and it's a friend of ours, and she's been to a used record store, and in the record store she found my friend's albums. And my friend, he wrote his name on the jackets of all his albums, and there they were. And she went to the manager of the used record store, and he kept records. He had a card with a name on it of the person that he had bought all those albums from, and that turned out to be the brother of one of the junkies that lived downstairs. But my friend never did call the cops. That was kind of the rule in those days. You just don't really want to mess with cops. So you get robbed, you get robbed. That bicycle, that stolen bicycle, it got stolen 2 more times. The first time, some junkie friends of the junkies downstairs, I used to park it there in like close to the stairwell of the downstairs of the apartment building, and some guys had just grabbed it and were pulling it back into their car. And one of the girl junkies downstairs, she was kind of sweet on me. I don't know why, but she really was. And she saw it, and man, she just went ballistic. She went right after those guys and attacked them. She grabbed that bike as they were like yanking on it. She pulled it away from them. Gary likes that bike. You don't take this bike. Gary rides this bike. So she saved the bicycle. Didn't do any good. About a week or so later, I don't know where I went, like the downtown library or someplace, and I have some public place like that, and I had left the bicycle, and I had a lock. It wasn't a really good lock, but it was a kind with a key and a long metal loop that you can run through your spokes. And when I came out to where I had left the bicycle, there was no bicycle. There was just that lock, and somebody had used like metal snips, one of those bolt cutter things, and there the lock was. To this day, when I think of that period of my life, not the best period of my life by any stretch of the imagination, I think of that broken lock laying there on the sidewalk as kind of a symbol of that dismal time. And I'm happy to report that I eventually cleaned up my act, got my financial stuff together, and moved into much better neighborhoods, completed my education, and became a decent human being. I hope I'm a decent human being at long last.